Getting, and yes, it is time for us to get a look at the SMB across borders. Here we look at the details coming in from the East African bloc and as well as the African continent and more further across the world, looking at all matters to do with business.
For our we kick-started with Kenya, where fuel crisis in Kenya worsens ahead of the price changes. Fuel shortage has returned to haunt motorists as uncertainties over the state-backed subsidiary head of the monthly review over pump prices persist. Outlets outside Nairobi started experiencing shortages over the weekend, with scarcity being felt in the capital from Monday. Now, oil dealers linked to the shortages to lack of clarity on fuel subsidy and as well as the state introduced last April to subsidize the prices amid suspicion of hoarding. Now, delays in payment of subsidies to the companies by the government have pushed up prices in wholesale market. Oil major resells fuel to the smaller independent fuel retailers who control 40% of the market. This has seen the small retailers hesitate to buy the costly fuel, with increased supply of major oil and unable to plug into the deficit. But the oil majors have as well been conscious to increase supply, certain about whether the state would compensate them for fuel used to calculate monthly price adjustments, which takes effect on 15th, and that was tomorrow, and will stay in place for 1 month. The state in March partially withdrew the fuel subsidy, sending diesel and petrol prices to an all-time high in the first increase since October. The government says it owes the companies Kenyan shillings around 13 billion, that's around 112 million US dollars, and on April 4th released 8.2 billion Kenyan shillings, that's around 70.7 billion US dollars to the dealers, who claim to owe an excess of around 20 billion Kenyan shillings, that's calculated to be 172 million US dollars. Now, the payment briefly eased the shortage amid assurance from the state that were enough petroleum products. And on Monday, nearly all filling stations in Kisumu-Nairobi highway were closed, while the few in the capital with fuel had long queues of motorists waiting to fill up. And we conclude on this one, a litre of petrol is retailing at above 200 shillings in some fueling stations, bridging the level set by the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority in its last monthly review. In Nairobi, diesel and petrol prices are kept at around 115.60, and that is around $1 US, and Kenyan shilling 134.72, that's around 1.16 US dollar for the month of April 15th. And the sharp rise in fuel is the wake of the Russia-Ukraine war that has triggered a rally in commodities like crude oil and crippled the subsidy scheme around there. So Kenya is one of the countries right now that is being really affected by fuel or the skyrocketing of prices around there. At least we've not seen that in Uganda. I don't know if you have seen that.
The prices.
Personally, I have not seen, no, the queues of the borders or the queues of motorists regarding the search of fuel. And if you look at the ones who are even crossing, taking a long kilometers to cross to come to Uganda for fuel, you realize that I think I've not seen that happening here.
My worry is we may be heading to the worst if at all Kenya is in such a situation. I've got to realize that fuel prices are shooting up again because when you look at most of the petrol stations now, petrol had decreased to around 4,900 because remember the other time when it was actually hitting up to 6,000, some areas apparently had it at 7, 8, then it had to get back. When government came out and addressed the matters, because I do remember even the Right Honorable Prime Minister saying it is because of the suppliers or the main or the main fuel station owners here who decided to set that market price, not the matters that we're actually saying. But when you look at most of the petrol stations currently, it is that petrol is now heading to 5,300. Some of the brands are having it at 5,250.
It's above 5,000 to the majority.
Then the fewer brands, or let's say not the bigger ones, or the small brands of fuel, are actually having it at 5,100. Now that shows you how much fuel is actually increasing steadily. And diesel is now above 4,600
yes,
with all petrol stations. So that shows you how we are also likely to head into such a situation if we are not ready. Because remember, Kenya is managing our imports in there. That means even the fuel that comes in, we use Tanzania and Kenya. Most probably Kenya when it comes to the fuel, because it is actually saving us costs of transportation. But that clearly shows you that we as Uganda, we really need to, I don't know, if it's prayers, better.
We're in fasting period, so the Ramadan, our dear Muslims continue to pray for this particular one, even the Christian community. But if you were to relate it to the cost of productivity that is going to happen in the country, we're likely to face a challenge as the consumers, because this is going to create competition. Do you realize what is going to happen to the parts in the east, or parts adjacent to the border in Busia? What if something happens and they run out of fuel? That means we're going to see long queues, motorists driving to the nearby cities or nearby areas. And where will that be? Where will that anyways head us to? Anyway, let us look for the what is going to be coming forward, and let us be watching the situation as we hold the authorities accountable, at least to come and address these particular situations. Even though they are coming out to say, we had Bank of Uganda last week, and the answer is that every day they wake up to look for the answer, and the answer is not yet known, or they don't get the answer. But I pray that the answer comes very quick and fast.
People still say they think the only challenge is because we are yet to find a new governor for the Bank of Uganda. You know, we haven't got a new Bank of Governor.
The new governor.
The
new governor for the Bank of Uganda. But there was new appointments recently, but we don't want to just give information. We want a factual one. I was anticipating to be Michael Ating, because he was the deputy governor. I was expecting him to replace, actually, to take shoes. But it's not yet there, and I don't want to just convey it loudly, because you never know. Those are social media speculations. Until it is confirmed, we will surely be telling you who is the new governor.
Well, and speaking of the SMB across borders, now let's set our eyes to Tanzania, as the ministry officials have been equipped with skills to manage various projects in there. The officials with the Ministry of Investment, Industry and Trade, that is of Tanzania, have been equipped with skills to prepare, manage, monitor and evaluate various development projects, so as to improve their ability to identify the critical resources in project planning to bring inclusive development to their nation. The Ministry of Investment, Industry and Trade Deputy Permanent Secretary Ali Gugu urged the ministry's officials to use the 5 days training as it will guide them in their daily activities in bringing national development. He said the implementation of the training was one of the implementations of the Enhanced Integrated Framework Tier 2 project, with activities that were being implemented in various economic sectors in Tanzania. He said one of the specific objectives of the Enhanced Integrated Framework Tier 2 project is to build the capacity
factories in China. The announcement came even as authorities eased some of the Shanghai's coronavirus regulations on Tuesday. This means that actually some of the city's 25 million people are able to leave their homes for the first time in weeks. Now, the city was locked down in late March after the infections surged in the key manufacturing and financial hub. Now, in the stock exchange filing, Pegatron says it had halted operations at the factories in Shanghai, nearly Kunshan, in the response to COVID-19 prevention's requirements from the local government. The company said it would work with authorities to resume the operations as soon as possible. Now, major Apple MacBook manufacturer Quant and iPad maker Compal Electronics have also paused activities in Chinese cities, according to the Japanese newspaper. And Apple Quanta Compal did not immediately respond to the request for the comment. Dan Ivers, who is an analyst as well as an investment firm, Wedbush Securities, said he was expecting shutdowns to have an impact on production. He estimated around production of 3 million iPhones that has been affected so far this month, with more to come out of these continuities. And as we conclude on this one, if shifted production to other manufacturing sites while resuming operations in Shenzhen, with employees working in closed loop system, which saw staff leaving and working at the plant. Since the pandemic began in 2019, China has enforced shutdowns affecting millions of people in major cities, including Xi'an and Wuhan. Now, the lockdown of Shanghai is the largest to date, and the city is key center for the financial industry, manufacturing, home to the world's biggest port. We still speak about China and how people are suffering with the lockdowns, especially in Shanghai, where it has got over 25 million people who are indoors right now and working out for their fate, and whether to continue working in homes. You know, the possibilities of working from home is now back in areas of Shanghai, but we pray for the situation to at least calm down. But as we study Shanghai, what does it mean for a country like Uganda?
Well, I think we wouldn't want to ask for a lockdown.
You know, the National Planning Authority sent a projection. I got a bit scared.
The cases will be high.
When you start seeing such projections, and for the time they have been sending projections and, you know, projecting COVID-19, you realize they have been on the right track, because otherwise you follow the trend and how the trend of the mapping and the flow chart, how it has been ongoing. So they are highlighting it. Okay, the situation right now for their projection is not scary, but when you look at the curves, in 2 months to come, if Uganda is not alert, we might start registering worst situations, I must say, in case we are not alert.
And of course, we need to stay by alert, and I think it's actually telling us to be more aware, because most probably the entire community of Ugandans have already forgotten about COVID. But now, speaking of let's be across borders, let's try to trace what is coming in from the world of the Russia and Ukraine war, as the VITOL group, which is the world's top oil trader, will stop buying Russian crude. Where does this come from? The VITOL group, which is the world's top independent oil merchant, will stop trading Russian crude oil and products by the end of a year. And the Dutch Energy and Commodities Trading Company will also not enter into any new Russian crude and product transaction. The VITOL declined to comment beyond confirming the accuracy of an article that was published in Europe, and which reported the news earlier. Since Russia invaded Ukraine in February, the United States, United Kingdom, Canada and Australia have all announced bans on Russian oil, as major companies including Shell, Total Energies and Neste have also stopped buying Russian crude all they have said they will do so by the end of 2022. And a wider de facto embargo has taken hold as banks, traders, shippers and insurance companies try to avoid falling foul of Western financial sanctions. As Russian oil has become toxic for many buyers, its benchmark Urals crude has traded at an ever wider discount on the world market. It is now worth $34 a barrel less than Brent crude. The International Energy Agency estimated on Wednesday that supplies of Russian oil will drop by 1.5 million barrels a day in April, and this could fall by as much as 3 million a day from May as buyers turn away. And VITOL's revenues almost doubled last year at $279 billion as global demand for oil bounced back after economies reopened from the pandemic lockdowns. The company traded 7.6 million barrels of crude and then the other oil products a day last year, according to its website. That's more than Russia's daily exports of crude oil, with the IEA estimating at about 4.7 million barrels in 2021 of the about 2.4 million barrels per day that went to Europe. But there are signs that the European Union could be the next to ditch Russian oil, as last week the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the bloc was considering an oil embargo as part of a fresh round of sanctions. The cumulative impact of this widening embargo could be higher oil prices globally as the buyers scramble to replace the supplies. Russia is the world's second largest crude oil exporter behind Saudi Arabia and accounted for 14% of global supply last year, according to the IEA.
And relatively to Russia, now let's go to Germany, where it is facing around 240 billion in regards to recession of supply of Russian natural gas, which was suddenly shut off. The country's top forecasters warned earlier on that was earlier on yesterday. The country would lose around 220 billion euros. That's around 238 billion dollars in economic output over the next 2 years in the event such of shocks, according to the report 5 German Economic Institute highlighted. Now, German GDP would rise up by, just to highlight for you, a 1.9% in 2022 and contracted by a 2.2% in 2023. Growth would be around 2.7% this year if the gas keeps on flowing the way it is. Now, cutting Russian gas would push Europe's largest economy into a sharp recession. Economics around there were highlighting, and Kuth Research directed as the Kehl Institute for the World's Economy that had the reports and authors. Revelations of atrocities commented on that Bucha, while the suburb of Kiev was under control of the Russian forces, prompted to the European Union to escalate economic sanctions against Moscow and go after Russia's vast energy export for the first time since it invaded Ukraine. Now, EU leaders agreed to phase out the Russian coal import, as an EU source was reporting, and would be banned in August. Now, a new 6th round of sanctions would already be discussed, and some of the European Union officials who called for actions on Russia's oil would actually see the gas and exports around there have an impact. But a ban on Russia gas in the near term would weaken a havoc on Germany, which would be relayed on Russia for about 46% of the natural gas in 2020. According to the International Energy Agency, they are highlighting the uses of fuel to heat homes, generate electricity, as well as help people and its factories. As we conclude on this one, the European Union is already trying to slash imports of Russian gas by around 66% this year and break its independence entirely on the Russian energy. And you realize that targeting Russian gas and supplies would likely to worsen inflation in Germany, where it is hitting the highest level in more than 40 years. Last month, consumer prices rose around 7.3% from the year before, data from the country's federal statistics officials were highlighting. And the main culprit here, Durham, is now on the soaring prices of the natural gas, oil, which rose around by 40% over the same period. So you realize with the Russian-Ukraine invasion, and if it's gas, it is to shut down, the European Union is highlighting is going to affect Germany's GDP, and you realize this is not going to remain the same. It is already affecting, if you're to realize what is happening.
I think it is, and most probably the European continent has started to feel the pinch of the Russian and Ukraine. The mere fact that the war is actually taking part in their own playfield, and they are supposed to be more alert than the other countries in the entire world, I would say. But besides that, we head into a break, and we are going to return with more from the business quotes, business tip, and more from the SMB reports.